Okay. Why? I don't know. But it said he had to go, but he can come back. The Assyrian Empire. They had a very strong military. And they were super duper mean, super duper cruel. They were not very nice. For funsies, they might just burn down all your crops. They'd burn your town after they defeated you. Not because they had to, but because it hurt you, and they liked to hurt people. When they conquered you, they made you pay tribute. Remember, that's the money that, Khan makes you pay so he doesn't beat you up more. And kind of their idea was they're going to be so harsh, so brutal, so cruel that they would rather have you just surrender instead of fight. So if they got a really bad reputation, if Adelina, is constantly being the biggest bully ever and so mean, when Adelina comes in, she just wants people to surrender instead of going and fighting her at all. And they were super powerful because they were the first group to have iron weapons. And it's one of those things where when you have iron and your enemies do not, it makes you stronger. It makes you stronger. Because when you can literally break their weapons because yours are stronger, that's a big deal. A big, big deal. So basically, what happened is other people had bronze, they had iron. Maddox has his bronze sword, Jackie has her iron sword. They swing the swords at each other. Maddox's bronze sword breaks. That's a big, big problem for Maddox. So that's why the Assyrians were so powerful. But because the Assyrians were so mean, so terrible, people rebelled because they hated them. I mean, this picture is a prime example of some of the things the Assyrians would do. They would literally go and just blind people. They would poke their eyeballs out with spears. One of the ways they would do to humiliate people is like they would remove the heads off of the leaders and like turn it into like a head necklace and have you wear the necklace of your leader's head on your march home. They would go do things like, cut off for every 100 people, they'd cut off 90 people's both hands and 10 people's one hand. They would go remove the eyes of 90 people and remove one eye out of 10. And so that like 10% of your population had only one eye and then not, I mean, it was just, they were cruel, they were horrible, they were harsh, and people hated them. So that's one side of the Assyrians. And they did this because their religion literally said the world would end if they stopped conquering. If they ever lost a battle, they said the world would end. Now, their capital was the city of Nineveh. Yes, that very same Nineveh some of you are familiar with the story of Jonah. And he was like, I don't want to go there. Yeah, because it was a cruel, horrible place because of the Assyrians. But that was their capital. And we know that they separated their empire into provinces, so they had good government with that sort of thing. We know that they built tons of roads. So we really see two sides of the Assyrians because also they built the first libraries of the world. So the same people that always dreamed up the cruelest, harshest, meanest things they could do to people, they also built libraries, the first ones, collections of books. They built beautiful art such as bas reliefs where we have this giant wall with these giant statues carved into it. We have aqueducts being created so that water could be brought to people. So we have two sides of this empire. So aqueducts to go help the infrastructure so people can have water, roads so people can travel. All of these things they made. So, two sides of the story. Now let's go look at the size of the Assyrian Empire because we see that they are humongous. So the Assyrian Empire is in two iterations. The first of the Assyrians is going to be this darker green. All right. Pretty big, Mesopotamia and more. Well, when we get to the Neo-Assyrians, when they rise up again, because what's going to happen is everyone's going to rebel, fight them. They're going to go back, be small, but then, Danny takes the throne and winds up going and leading to even more conquest. So we now get to the people that overthrew them, the Chaldeans. Sometimes you'll hear the Chaldeans called the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Really, the Chaldeans is the correct term, but we call them the Neo-Babylonians sometimes because they made their capital Babylon. Once again, not Babylon, Babylon. And what happened was they convinced people to join them and overthrow the Assyrians because it wasn't hard because everybody hated the Assyrians. So they said, hey, Khan, you hate the Assyrians? Shania, you hate them? Riley O, Riley P, you guys don't like these guys? They're mean, they're jerks. Okay, let's go fight them. And they did. And they won. And from the Chaldeans, we get one of the most famous kings ever, a guy named Nebuchadnezzar. You might have heard of him. Yeah. He winds up actually marrying a woman who was from lush and beautiful lands, and she was sad because he says, it's so barren here, none of the beautiful gardens from my homeland. So he creates the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which essentially was a ziggurat that was covered with plants and trees and all sorts of awesomeness. And something unfortunate that's been lost to time, which is a real bummer because the Hanging Gardens, you know, from all historical accounts, were amazing. And so that's a big ziggurat. And like I said, Hanging Garden. Sorry, I was talking about before I had the slides clicked over. They built a lot of really cool architecture. Here's the Ishtar Gate, which still stands today. We see it's beautiful. It's blue. Obviously, it's been painted, you know, since then. And here we can take a look at the size of our Chaldean Empire. Not quite as big as the Assyrians as they didn't go into Egypt, but we see that they had the entire Fertile Crescent. They wound up even going to present-day Turkey, which is pretty amazing, just the size and power of this empire. So that's our Chaldeans. Yeah. Finally, they did a lot of great inventions. Here's a good zoomed up of what we think the Hanging Gardens look like with golden statues, lots of plants. They did tons of math and astronomy. They create the first sundial, which is awesome because then you're able to tell time. Very, very good stuff. Very, very good stuff. And that, my cherubs, is our notes for the day. So I'm going to stop recording.